WNST. It'll be about 9 months before the Ravens kick the football off, and we were all subjected to a weekend of the likes of Jacksonville and Nashville, amongst others. But Luke Jones ventured off into the basketball world. You are you're healing your purple wounds with a little Terps basketball on a very, very bitterly cold night, and in comes Iowa. You couldn't say that 10 years ago, right, Luke?
Yeah, it's still weird. I mean, we've talked about this for a few years now. It still hasn't fully sunk in that, okay, this is just normal now.
That the Hawkeyes are coming to town.
Yeah, and this isn't a very good Iowa team, and we saw that on Sunday night. I mean, it's a team that's 0-5 in the Big Ten, clearly having their issues after having some success here recently. But, Maryland coming off of the really difficult performance at Michigan State, where they played well for the first 10, 15 minutes of the game, and then got run out of the gym after that. But
it was quite the JV effort, wasn't it? I mean, like in the second half, it was like men, boys, right?
Well, and that's part of it too. I mean, I think clearly they lost Melo Trimble to the NBA draft, or not the draft, but just going pro, and they've lost Justin Jackson. They've lost Yvonne Bender. So, your front court depth is just not there. This is a team that's really only about 7 deep right now. They got a few minutes, from the kid, the redshirt freshman, but Joshua Tomayak. But they're searching right now. I mean, this is just a team that doesn't have a whole lot of horses beyond their top 2 or 3 guys right now. Now, that said, those top 2 or 3, when you're talking about Herter, Anthony Cowan, and Bruno Fernando, who's kind of the sensation on campus right now, beyond those guys, you need more depth, and you need others to step up and contribute. And the good news for them is they got that on Sunday night. So they took care of business. It wasn't the best performance starting off. They came out a little flat. Certainly, they got a spark from Dion Wiley coming off the bench. But in the second half, a much more balanced effort. They had 6 players reach double-digit scoring, which is kind of something that if you can draw it up a certain way, that's the way you do it. But a really nice performance against a team that they needed to have a performance like this. I mean, let's face it. You look at Maryland. They didn't have a great out-of-conference schedule. We know they had that stretch where they struggled. They dropped the game at Syracuse. Dropped the
St. Bonaventure. Let's not forget that one.
St. Bonaventure. They lost to Purdue. They lose 3 out of 4. You do that in early December, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So they have to win games, and it's not as though there's a ton of potential signature wins remaining on the schedule. So they just need to stack wins in the Big Ten. So they get over 500 in the Big Ten. They have 14 wins now. Again, we'll see what that looks like come early to mid-March, but a nice performance from the Terps. Did what they needed to do against an inferior team on Sunday night.
Well, you talk about signature wins. It is different in this conference this year. Now, maybe by the time they get to Northwestern or Nebraska toward the end of the year, maybe even Michigan toward the end of the year, you'll see more ranked teams. But it's sort of kind of Michigan State and then Purdue and then everybody else at this point. And Ohio State, you talk about playing Michigan State well. They look like they didn't belong with Michigan State. Now they're going to have to go see Ohio State, who took care of Michigan State on Sunday and annihilated. It's like Michigan State didn't wake up on Sunday.
Yeah, admittedly did not see that game. But, you saw the score, and it was definitely surprising to see that. Now, Michigan State, hadn't been on the road a whole lot, but, they go to Columbus, and Ohio State completely handled them. So be interesting to see how Ohio State comes off of that performance. Certainly we want to see how the Terps respond going back on the road after not faring very well against the Spartans. But, it really is a conference that right now, you just said it. Michigan State looks good. Purdue looks good. Ohio State's 4-0 in the conference now, so you have to give them some credit, but they have 4 losses, so it's not as though they've been a juggernaut this year. So, it's really about seeing if Maryland can kind of be at the top of the list of that next tier. And then, from that point, then, you just see how it goes the rest of the way. But, it's clearly a challenge for this team. Losing Justin Jackson is huge. You and I haven't had a chance to talk about it very much. But when you're talking about a guy who, was testing the waters for the NBA draft 6-7 months ago, and now he's out for the year with a shoulder injury, that's tough. And it's really a case where Turgeon's kind of searching for that rotation. And like I said, can he get some meaningful minutes from Tomaic? And he was able to get that on Sunday night, but that doesn't mean that's going to happen every week. His other bench players, Jared Nickens has been really a big disappointment since his freshman year, if we're being honest.
Yeah, we've been talking about that kid for years, like he was going to be a player or a sixth man or something, but he really hasn't been that guy.
No, he hasn't, and Deion Wiley gave them a nice spark on Sunday night when they came out flat. He came into the game and gave them some points, hit a couple three-pointers, finished with 10 points, did get poked in the eye and had to leave.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope he's okay. They don't have any depth as it is. He's one of the only guys they got coming off the bench.
And that's what's really concerning about this team. Wiley, we know he's been injury prone. We've talked about Nickens, Michael Tchaikovsky, who is their big man, their starting center. We know he's had injuries. Bruno Fernando's been banged up at a couple points here in his freshman season. So, the depth is just hanging on by a thread right now. It's not as though they don't have some quality players. I think we all know that. But when you're only going 7, maybe 8 deep, and that's a big maybe at this point, you have very little margin for error. So, that's where the reality for this Terps team right now. As much as you love Anthony Cowan, had a strong performance. Kevin Herter, we know what he's capable of doing when he gets going. Fernando's been as exciting as any player that I can recall here in recent memory. But
sort of a flashing the diamond stone thing, but actually doing it, right?
It's funny. I was actually talking to a couple reporters, who admittedly I've only been to a couple games so far this year. Of course, I'll be covering now with the Ravens done.
You got time on your hands now, Luke.
Yeah. but we were talking about this. Bruno Fernando, you mentioned Diamond Stone. I completely agree about that. Stone was fine, but certainly wasn't the sensation that I think a lot of people anticipated.
Well, you waited for him to go out there every night and dominate, right?
Right.
And this Fernando kid, on Elvis's birthday, as we sit here in the beginning part of January, I feel like when I look down at the schedule, and I don't know, much about Northwestern or Nebraska or certainly Minnesota coming up on the schedule next week, and I'm hoping to go to that game with you. But I'm thinking he could be a dominant player here. He's going to be a difference maker every night that he's not in foul trouble. But again, we talk about depths and injuries and hamstring pulls, and boy, there's no margin for error for this team right now at all. And they keep winning. I didn't expect them to beat Michigan State, but other than Michigan State, they haven't lost in a month.
Yeah, and that's what they had to do. When you have a stretch where you lose 3 out of 4 in non-conference play, I know one of those games was that weird. That weird early season stretch where they played Purdue and they lost at home. But when you go through a stretch like that and you don't have a great out-of-conference schedule to begin with, you really put yourself behind the 8 ball. So it's been nice to see them stack those wins. But getting back to Bruno Fernando for a moment, you mentioned Diamond Stone, but I was talking to a couple other reporters. This kid might be the most exciting. Not saying best, but most exciting, most energetic. The name that keeps coming to mind for me is Chris Wilcox. And the thing about Fernando is, I think he's more polished than Chris Wilcox was as a freshman. Remember, Wilcox took the huge jump from freshman year to sophomore year, and of course went pro after.
Yeah, we had a lot of that here over 25 years, right? Whether it was Joe Smith, guys that came in, and maybe that's why you look at a Wiley or a Nickens or any of these guys and say, well, let's not judge them today. Let's judge them where they're going to be. And I think that's part of the excitement, quite frankly, of Herter and Cowan and Jackson last year was projecting where they would be this year. But, when guys feel like they're going to be around for a little bit, you get more attached to them than a Diamond Stone where you're like, dude, you better produce now because you're going to be gone in 2 months. This kid looks like, he's not going to be here a long time to me, right? He looks like a real player.
Yeah, and it was funny. I was talking to a reporter about this, and it was really a case of, we know Maryland's not a ranked team. I think most of us, being honest, are not anticipating, even if they make the tournament, not anticipating a deep run. They really don't have the depth. Losing Jackson certainly hurt. But you're almost hoping in a way, for selfish reasons, that maybe Maryland doesn't have isn't in the national spotlight, and that might keep Bruno Fernando around a little bit longer. Because he's energetic. He's good. I mean, a couple of those alley-oops that he sent in on Sunday night. I mean, highlight reel dunks. He brings an energy that when you have a team that and this applies to any team. You come out flat, you're going to have stretches where your energy level's not there. I mean, clearly Maryland played. They had a busy schedule here. They had a quick turnaround going to Michigan State on Thursday night after the Penn State game, and then they come back home to play on Sunday night. I mean, that's not exactly typical of a college basketball.
Well, he also had to carry that ass kicking around for 48 hours too, right?
So you see what he can bring. And you just see him, even from the beginning of the year, you're seeing him get better. And Turgeon talked about that after Sunday night's game. I mean, he said every time he takes the floor, he's playing smarter. And, this is...
Well, there's a lot of oxygen out there, too. I mean, he's going to get the minutes. He's going to play, right?
Yeah, well, they need it, right. I mean, and that's what's been interesting. I mean, early in the season, you didn't see the Terps go with Fernando and Tchaikovsky on the floor together a whole lot. And now it's like, well... if it's not them, then who? There really isn't anyone else. Like I said, if they get Joshua Tomei, to give them 10, 11 decent minutes, and
which he did give them, by the way, on Sunday night.
Yeah, he did do that on Sunday night. But again, that's not someone you were expecting to be playing. I've been joking around with people. Where's a Dave Neal when you need him? I mean, the Terps could use a guy like that right now, and that's kind of what Ivan Bender was. Fernando's he was huge on Sunday night for them. Certainly plays with that energy and the athleticism. It goes without saying. He is fun to watch, and you hope he sticks around for at least a couple years here because he is something. And he's already improving from where we saw at the beginning of the year.
Well, with the Terps, I think expectations were a lot higher. Now they have to be tempered just based on Jackson not being there, based on the kind of injuries they've had. But night by night, other than the Michigan State game, I don't expect them to be overmatched going out to Columbus, although Columbus did something to Michigan State that certainly Maryland looked in. It looked to me like if Maryland played Michigan State 20 times, they'd lose all 20. And that's kind of the way the number one team in the country should look. But I don't know what happened on Sunday afternoon. I was monitoring the game in between watching football because I saw it was on my guide, and I saw the score of it, and I'm like, well, maybe it's a game of runs. I mean, I saw Michigan State play the other night. And they never got back in the game, and I got hooked into the football games. And next thing you know, the Maryland game's on, and I'm watching the highlights of it. But I'm thinking, how many nights is Maryland really going to roll the ball out on the court and be overmatched on this schedule? Maybe not again. They weren't overmatched by Purdue the first time around.
Yeah, well, Purdue's going to be tough just because, the size that they have is such a challenge. I mean, any team that they're going to go up against that has impactful big men, not just size, but guys that can actually contribute, not just be a warm body.
Like rebound for a change, right?
Those are going to be the teams that they struggle against because they just don't have the front court depth. If you get Tchaikovsky and Fernando in foul trouble, you're sunk.
They got Herder in foul trouble last week, and that didn't do them any good either.
Yeah. The Terps got in all kinds of foul trouble against Michigan State, and that was part of their downfall. Besides the fact that they weren't as good. It's just obvious. But this team has some really good players, though. Anthony Cowan, I think, has done everything you could have asked for to kind of step in that Melo Trimble role. The good thing about him is, you saw him on Sunday night, no turnovers, and we know this team has gotten better in the turnover department recently, but that's been a major issue for them really since the start of the season. So seeing him take care of the basketball a little bit better. Kevin Herder, we know what he's capable of doing. I think anyone who saw him play last year isn't surprised by what you've seen from him. It's just, it's about consistency when you're talking about underclassmen. And with Fernando and, a healthy Tchaikovsky who, it was funny, early in the first half, there were at one point from press row, you could hear Mark Turgeon yelling he basically said, Checo, you need to start playing. And was very animated about it. And from that point on, he really started playing and did a nice job. So, they have some. It's not as though the cupboard's bare. It's just that cupboard's not as deep as you'd like it to be. And the other guy I didn't mention who kind of had a quiet 14 points, but Daryl Morcell, certainly a freshman, Baltimore kid, does some good things for them. That doesn't have the polished perimeter shot. Certainly a guy who you hope gets better as time goes on, but he'll defend. He can defend a point guard, and he's one of those tweener guys right now for them that they're going to need to be able to defend against some big men because...
Well, he looks like he belongs. I mean, well, come on, man. We're 5 games into the Big Ten schedule here, right? Literally.
No, that's what I'm saying. He's done a nice job for them. I mean, he doesn't, like I said, he's not polished offensively, but he does the dirty work. They'll defend. Sunday night's game was a perfect example. At some points, he's going to be guarding a point guard, and other times they're going to be asking him when they go with a smaller lineup, to be guarding a 3 or a 4. I mean, that's where they are right now with their front court.
Well, he's also a guard that can rebound, which I like.
Yeah. I mean, he's only listed at 6'4", but he can do some of those things for you. So, they've got some nice players here. I mean, I think there's a lot to be encouraged about over the next couple of years, and they'll have more talent coming in. We know all about Mark Turgeon recruiting, but for the short term, without the two, Justin Jackson and Yvonne Bender, who Bender was a solid bench player. You knew what you were going to get from him, a reliable, big man depth kind of guy. Without those guys, it makes things very, very difficult. So I don't know ultimately where this team's going to end up. I mean, they have a chance to make the NCAA tournament certainly, but they've got work to do, and at some point here they're going to have to probably come away with a win or two that you aren't necessarily anticipating, especially playing on the road. So we'll see how that plays out. But again, a pretty clean, solid performance on Sunday night. Wasn't high energy early on. That was concerning to see. Maybe not surprising, considering they were coming off of a Thursday night game and had a busy week. But they settled in. They shot the ball well, which wasn't exactly shocking. Iowa, not exactly known for their defense so far this year, as Fran McCaffrey's team really struggled. And you saw how frustrated Fran McCaffrey was as he got tossed right before halftime, and just an epic meltdown for him. But, again...
that was sort of an Earl Weaver moment for him, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, he kind of has a reputation for, garnering some of those technicals and losing his cool, but it's been a frustrating year for Iowa. There's no question about that. They've got some nice players. I mean, Isaiah Moss kept them in that game. Jordan Bohannon, which, if you remember, really hurt the Terps last year. He hit some shots here and there, but that's just a team that's not good enough right now. And you saw old Fran head to the showers early and kind of reflected, what's been going on for Iowa. So this wasn't a game that you're going to come away blown away, but the Terps did exactly what you would want them to do against a team that's winless in the conference.
All of our WNST programming here brought to you by our friends at King Discount Liquors, Lottery, Beer, Booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Drank a bottle of my Malbec over the weekend. I'm already into my supplies and into my craft beers as well. Get out to Rosedale and give the King a ring. Also brought to you by Freedmont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need Freedmont.com if you're in the market to buy, sell, or even refinance, or just thinking about it, trying to get a little education. You can do that at Freedmont.com. Luke Jones joining us here. He was in College Park on Sunday night. Will not be there for the next 10 days as we get ready now. Road trip, Ohio State on Thursday, Michigan over the weekend, then home to Minnesota next Thursday, then off to Indiana later on in the week, and then the two big games, Super Bowl week against Michigan State and Purdue. Those are the next 5 up for the Terps. Last thing for you, I mean, you talked about Cowan a little bit and where he is. Boy, the maturation of where he is taking the ball, no Trimble, he looks very, very comfortable. I mean, I said this earlier, it looks like there's some oxygen out on the court, and that would be a term I would use for 2 years ago when there was one ball and 5 guys who wanted it.
Yeah, I mean, they need Cowan to play a ton of minutes. I mean, he played 37 minutes on Sunday night, and I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, I thought from early on last year you could see that Anthony Cowan was at least a Melo Trimble light. You saw some similar skills. Wasn't great shooting the basketball on Sunday night, but still got to the line, 7 of 9 from the line. 15 points. He had 7 assists. I mean, he's
didn't turn the ball over. We'll say that twice, right? Didn't turn the ball
exactly.
over.
Now, hey, you want your point guard to not turn the ball over. I mean, that's kind of the idea, and to dish out some assists. And in the case of Cowan, he's certainly capable of scoring. But some of the same questions that persisted with Melo Trimble, persist with him. He's a really small guy. I mean, even smaller than Trimble. Listed 6 foot. I'm not sure he actually is 6 foot. He's 170 pounds. Again, I don't know if he's 170 pounds unless he's soaking wet. But he just, he really gives you a lot of confidence. And from early on last year, I mean, that's why I thought, even before we found out that Melo Trimble was going to go pro, I thought they'd be in good hands with Cowan. And he hasn't disappointed. I mean, he's averaging 16 points a game, just under 5 assists a game. Again, you'd like to see him take care of the basketball a little bit better. He did that on Sunday night. He's done that, I think, better as the year's gone on. But it's tough replacing someone like Trimble. I mean, that as important as he was over the last 3 years to the program, regardless of whether he got better or disappointed or left fans wanting more or whatever, Cowan's done a nice job for them. And again, when you have a team that is lacking depth, that guard play becomes that much more important, that you run the show, that you're efficient, because you're going to have guys playing a lot of minutes. He's going to be playing a ton of minutes. Herter is going to play a ton of minutes. It's just where the Terps are at this point. So it's been good to see him emerge the way that you had hoped and really anticipated. And for different issues you could talk about with the Terps, I mean, Anthony Cowan, he has not been an issue, nearly as much as you might have feared. But I think he's done a nice job, and again has really helped ease that burden of Melo Trimble not being around. Now, you can talk about depth certainly behind him, but he's done a really nice job taking that step forward from his freshman year to sophomore year.
Terps get back after it against Ohio State, where they're flying high after a big win over Michigan State, knocking off the #1 team in the country on Sunday. We're going to be around all week here preparing for more football this week, more word out of Owings Mills and changes on the defensive side, as well as anything that's going on with the Orioles, which is usually not a whole lot. Anything you missed this week, you can find out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships digitally to your email inbox free of charge at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on our WNST text service. If you get one of these into your phone, the Orioles, the Ravens, it's sort of like the smoke bellowing out of the top of the tower. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford at Security Boulevard. Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. I am re-releasing Purple Rain 2 beginning on Thursday of this week, a chapter a day every day for 24 days leading up to Super Bowl 52 and leading up to Ray Lewis's Pro Football Hall of Fame nomination. I am putting a bus trip on sale later on this week. I have been gathering all sorts of details and interesting little snippets for the weekend of August the 2nd. So you want to email me, nasty@WNST.net, if you want more information on our Canton Pro Football Hall of Fame bus trip with Ray Lewis coming up in August. I'll be putting that on sale this weekend. Nasty@WNST.net. Finds me Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.